The dead world of Xylos was a silent gray ball of rock and dust. It had no water, no plants, and no air to breathe. Its sun was a weak, distant star that gave little light and less heat. For a very long time, nothing had happened on Xylos. But today, there was movement. A large, graceful starship, the emissary of dawn, hung in the space above the planet. It was not a human ship. It belonged to the Xelin, a species that was old and very organized. The ship looked like a beautiful, smooth seashell glowing with a soft inner light. Near it was a smaller, more blocky and practical ship. This was the human vessel, the Curiosity. Down on the surface, a team was working inside a large, clear dome. The dome kept a breathable atmosphere in and the harsh emptiness of Xylos out. Most of the figures moving around were tall and slender Xelin, with pale skin and large dark eyes. They spoke in quiet, careful tones. 2 humans were also there, watching. Their names were Jin and Sue. Jin was a xenoarchaeologist, a scientist who studied old things from other worlds. He was a calm man who liked to observe everything before he spoke. His friend Sue was an engineer. He was the kind of person who wanted to know how things worked, and he was often more direct than Jin. They were looking at a deep hole that had been dug in the center of the dome. At the bottom of the hole was a large metal object partially covered in gray dirt. "It is incredible, is it not?" said a smooth voice. A Xelin diplomat named Tay walked over to them. He was dressed in fine, silvery robes. He was important, and he knew it. To think this has been lying here untouched for millennia. "It is, Ambassador Tay," Jin said politely. "The preservation is remarkable. Our historical records speak of this time," Tay continued, his large eyes fixed on the object. "A period of great fear. A civilization of immense power and cruelty swept through this part of the galaxy. They burned worlds. They shattered empires. They were known only as the first destroyers. Then just as suddenly they were gone, vanished. This," he pointed a long, delicate finger toward the hole. "This is from them, a relic of the one who caused the great scouring." Sue leaned closer to Jin. "Looks like a big rock to me," he whispered. Jin gave a small, almost invisible shake of his head. He knew the Xelin took this very seriously. To them, the first destroyers were like demons from an old story. Finding a real piece of one was like finding a piece of a ghost. A Xelin scientist named Luna was directing the final stages of the dig. Her movements were precise and full of respect. She used gentle tools to brush the last of the dust away from the object. As the dirt fell away, its shape became clear. It was a helmet. It was not like any helmet Jin or Sue had ever seen, but it was unmistakably a helmet. It was made of a dark, dull metal that seemed to drink the light. It had a fierce, angular shape. There was a wide visor area, now completely black, and it looked heavy, solid, built for war. A low hum filled the dome as the Xelin scientists began their scans. Lights on their devices flickered and danced over the ancient metal. "The energy signature is confirmed," Luna announced, her voice filled with awe. "It is faint after all this time, but it is there. This is the source. The artifact is still active." A ripple of excitement and fear went through the Xelin team. An active relic from the destroyers. It was both a dream and a nightmare. Tay nodded, a grave look on his face. "We must be extremely careful. We do not know what we are dealing with. Its power is what broke the stars. We must understand it so such a power can never rise again." Jin watched everything closely. He was trying to be professional, but something was bothering him. The Xelin thought the first destroyers were giant, monstrous beings. But this helmet, it wasn't big enough for a giant. He mentally measured it, the opening for the neck, the space where a head would go. The proportions were all wrong for a huge creature. They looked familiar. Sue saw it too. He nudged Jin. "Hey," he whispered, his voice low. "The size. That's not for some big monster. That's for someone our size, maybe a little bigger, but not much." Jin nodded slowly. "I see it." The team used a powerful anti-gravity lifter to gently raise the helmet from its ancient resting place. It floated up out of the hole, turning slowly. As it rose, more details became visible. There were scratches and scuff marks on the surface. On one side, near where the ear would be, was a small circular port for a cable. It was a standard interface port, used for connecting to power or data. Sue squinted at it. His engineer's mind was working. "That port design," he muttered to Jin. "That's ancient. Really old. We used something like that a long time ago. The Mark 7. They stopped using it because it was always getting clogged with dirt and it was a pain to fix. Jin felt a cold knot form in his stomach, a familiar size. A familiar, if outdated, technology. It was too much of a coincidence. The helmet was carefully placed inside a protective case. The case was sealed with a soft hiss. The artifact will be moved to the Emissary of Dawn for full analysis, Tay declared. Our laboratories are the most advanced in the sector. We will unlock its secrets, he then turned to the two humans. As a gesture of goodwill and cooperation, your team will be granted observational access. Captain Hana and you two may observe our work. It was a kind offer, but it was also a way for the Zelen to show their superiority. They were letting the humans watch them do the important work. They all went back to their ships. The Curiosity was smaller and felt more lived in than the clean, quiet Zelen ship. The walls had photos and small personal items. The air smelled faintly of coffee and machine oil. Captain Hana was waiting for them in the ship's small meeting room. She was a sharp, capable woman with a no-nonsense attitude. Well, what's the verdict? She asked. Jin spoke first. It's a helmet, Captain. There's no doubt. And the Zelen are treating it like it's the most dangerous object in the galaxy. It might be, Hana said, if their legends are true. That's the thing, Sue cut in. I'm not sure they are. The helmet is the wrong size, and it's got tech on it that looks a lot like our own really old stuff. An old comms port. A design for a seal that we used to use on early pressure suits. Hana leaned forward, her elbows on the table. What are you suggesting? Jin and Sue looked at each other. They didn't want to say it. It was a crazy thought. We're not suggesting anything yet, Captain, Jin said carefully. We just have questions. Okay, Hana said. Keep your eyes open and your questions to yourselves for now. The Zelen are proud. They won't like us questioning their big discovery. We're here as guests. Later, on the view screen in his quarters, Jin watched the live feed from the Zelen laboratory. The helmet sat inside a powerful containment field. Zelen scientists in clean white suits were moving around it, their instruments probing and scanning. They looked confused. Their advanced scanners were not telling them what they wanted to know. Tay was there, watching. He looked impatient. What is the delay? He asked Luna. The material is unlike anything in our database, Ambassador, she replied, her voice frustrated. It resists our deep-level scans. The energy signature is simple, stable, but the source is a mystery. It is as if the technology is primitive yet impossible to understand. Jin zoomed the screen in on the helmet. He looked at the scratches. They weren't from weapons fire. They looked like the kind of marks you get from daily use, from being put down on a rough surface or bumped against a doorway. He looked at the shape of the visor. It was designed for two eyes set forward like a predator, like a human. The cold knot in his stomach tightened. He had a very bad feeling about this. The story of the first destroyer was the Zelen's oldest and most terrifying legend, and somehow, a piece of human history had ended up right in the middle of it. The helmet sat in the center of the Zelen laboratory. The room was a large circular chamber with clean white walls and soft glowing lights. The air was perfectly still and silent except for the low hum of the containment field. The field was a shimmering bubble of energy that surrounded the artifact. It was there for safety, to protect the helmet from them, and to protect them from the helmet. Tay and Luna stood before it. They had been there for hours. Their scientists had tried every scanner, every sensor, every tool they had. The results were always the same. Confusing. The alloy is simple in structure, one scientist reported, his voice tired. Iron, carbon, traces of titanium. It is a type of steel. But its atomic bonds are perfect. They show no decay. It should have rusted to dust 100,000 years ago. And the power source? Tay asked, his voice tight. He was losing his patience. Luna looked at her data pad. It is a simple, stable energy output. Very low level. It is not a weapon. It is more like a beacon. But the method of power generation is unknown to us. It is not nuclear. It is not chemical. It is not quantum. It is just there. Tay made a soft, frustrated sound. The first destroyer's helmet, and it is powered by a simple battery? That makes no sense. Their power was legendary. It could break planets. Look for hidden systems. Look for weapons. On the Curiosity, Jin and Sue watched the live feed from the lab. They were in their ship's common room drinking coffee. The Zelen had given them a view-only access. They could see and hear everything, but they could not speak to the lab. They're stuck, Sue said, taking a sip from his mug. They're trying to read a book by weighing it. Jin nodded. He was watching the Zealand scientists move around the helmet. They were so careful, so reverent. They treated it like a holy object that might bite them. They are looking for something that isn't there, Jin said quietly. They want to find a superweapon, so that is all they are looking for. On the screen, a Zealand scientist directed a complex energy scanner at the helmet. The scanner's lights danced over the dark metal. The readings on his screen went wild for a second, then settled back into the same simple pattern. It's resisting, the scientist said, a note of excitement in his voice. The artifact is defending itself. Sue snorted. It's not resisting. Their scanner is too powerful. It's like he's shouting a question at a sleeping man. The man just rolls over. It doesn't mean he's a warrior. In the lab, Tay was getting more annoyed. Perhaps we need a more direct approach. A physical probe. Luna looked horrified. Ambassador, we cannot risk damaging it. This is the only relic of its kind. Then what do you suggest? Tay snapped. We have learned nothing. From their ship, Jin and Sue could see the problem clearly. The Zealand technology was too advanced. It was too complicated. They were trying to solve a simple lock with a sonic hammer. Look at the neck ring, Jin said, pointing at the screen. See how it's segmented? That's for flexibility. For movement, that's a human design principle. And that port on the side, Sue added. I'm telling you, Jin, that's a Mark 7. My grandfather told me stories about fixing those. You needed a special tool to clean them out. If that got clogged, your suit comms would cut out. Very annoying. They both fell silent for a moment. The evidence was piling up. The size, the design, the technology. It was all pointing in one direction. A direction that was impossible and also terrifying. Back in the lab, Tay had decided on a new plan. We will use a resonant frequency analysis. We will sing to the metal. Its vibration will tell us its secrets. A low humming sound filled the laboratory. It was a single pure note that made the air vibrate. The Zealand watched their screens, waiting for a reaction from the helmet. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a very faint, high-pitched ringing sound came from the helmet. It was a harmonic echo of the Zealand's note. The artifact responds, Luna whispered. On the Curiosity, Sue leaned forward. No, it doesn't. That's just physics. You hit metal, it rings. That's all. But the Zealand did not see it that way. To them, it was a conversation. They changed the frequency of their hum. The helmet's ringing changed with it. It is communicating, one of the scientists said, his voice full of wonder. Tay looked triumphant. We are speaking to the first destroyer. Jin put his head in his hands. They are making it ring like a bell. They think they are talking to a ghost. Captain Hana came into the common room. What's all the excitement? The Zealand comms are buzzing. They think the helmet is talking to them, Sue said, shaking his head. They're just making it vibrate. Hana watched the screen for a minute. The Zealand were now using a sequence of different notes, trying to find a pattern the helmet liked. This is not good, she said. If they convince themselves it's communicating, they might do something reckless to answer it. Just then, the view on the screen changed. A Zealand technician had adjusted a camera to get a closer look at the helmet's visor. The dark surface reflected the laboratory lights. But as the camera moved, the angle changed. For a brief second, the reflection cleared, and there, etched into the inside of the visor, was something. It was not a weapon schematic. It was not an alien symbol. It was a word. A single word written in the blocky letters of old-style English. The camera moved again, and the reflection was gone. The visor was black once more. The Zealand had not noticed. They were too busy with their humming, but the three humans on the Curiosity had seen it. They had all seen it. The room was completely silent. Sue was the first to speak. His voice was a dry whisper. Did you see that? Jin could only nod. His blood had gone cold. Captain Hana's face was pale. Was that what I think it was? Sue turned to look at them, his eyes wide. It was a name. It said Lena. The word hung in the air. It was a human name. A simple old human name etched inside the helmet of the first destroyer. The three humans looked at each other. The impossible was becoming real. The legend of the destroyer was not a story about some alien monster. It was a story about them. It was a story about humanity, and they had no idea what to do about it. The humming in the Zealand lab had stopped. The scientists were now discussing the communication event with great excitement. They believed the harmonic ringing was a form of language, a complex code left by the destroyer. They did not see the word Lena. They were looking for a monster, not a person. On the Curiosity, the mood was heavy. Jinsu and Captain Hana sat in the common room, not speaking. The silence was loud. The name Lena was all they could think about. Finally, Hana spoke. Her voice was low and serious. We need to be very careful. This changes everything. It proves it, doesn't it? Sue said. He sounded less sure of himself now. It's one of ours. That helmet belonged to a human. It proves it to us, Jin corrected him. But if we tell the Zelen, what will they think? Their greatest monster was us. They might see it as a confession. They might think we are hiding a terrible secret. They might be afraid of us. Or they might be angry, Hana added. We have been their friends, their partners. If they find out we come from the destroyers, they might feel betrayed. This could break the alliance. They all knew she was right. The galactic community was built on trust. The story of the first destroyer was a shared nightmare for every other species. To find out that the humans were the descendants of that nightmare. It was a dangerous truth. We have to find out more, Jin said. We need to be sure. We need to know who Lena was. We need to know what really happened. How? Sue asked. We can't just walk in and ask to see their artifact. They won't let us touch it. Jin thought for a moment. Our historical archives. The early colonial records. They are not complete, but they might have something. A ship named after someone? A famous soldier? Anything, Hana agreed. Do it, but be discreet. Use a private terminal. Don't make any official requests. We don't want to raise any flags. Jin went to his quarters and started his search. The records from that time were old and full of gaps. It was a period known as the Silent Century. A lot of data was lost in a series of early wars. Wars that, until now, he had never thought much about. Meanwhile, on the Zelen ship, the situation was getting tense. Tay was pushing the scientists for answers. The communication had given him hope, but now they were stuck again. The energy signature is stable, but we cannot access the helmet's internal systems, Luna reported. It is like a box with no seams. We cannot open it. Then we must try a more powerful energy pulse, Tay insisted. A controlled surge. To wake it up, Luna looked worried. Ambassador, that is too risky. We do not know what will happen. We could damage the artifact. Or worse, we could activate something. We must take the risk, Tay said, his voice rising. The knowledge inside that helmet could protect the entire galaxy. We cannot be afraid. The Zelen scientists prepared a small focused energy emitter. They aimed it at the helmet. The plan was to send a quick, sharp burst of power into it, hoping to trigger a response. On the Curiosity, an alarm beeped on the bridge. Sue, who was helping monitor the Zelen feed, saw what they were doing. Captain, they're going to zap it, he yelled over the ship's intercom. Hana and Jin ran to the bridge. On the screen they could see the Zelen readying their device. They'll fry it, Sue said. That's a stupid amount of power for a simple battery. They'll destroy the power cell and any data inside. We have to stop them, Jin said. Hana opened a comm channel to the Zelen lab. Ambassador Tay, this is Captain Hana. We are observing your procedure. We must advise against the energy surge. Our analysis suggests the artifact's power source is delicate. You could permanently damage it. Tay's face appeared on the screen. He looked annoyed. Captain, with all respect, your analysis is based on guesswork. Our technology is capable of a precise application. We know what we are doing. This isn't about technology, Sue burst out, forgetting he was on an open channel. You're using a plasma torch to light a candle. You're going to blow it up. Tay's expression turned cold. We will proceed with our plan. The channel closed. On the Zelen ship, Tay gave the order. Begin. The energy emitter glowed brightly. A thin beam of blue light shot out and hit the helmet. For a second, nothing happened. Then the helmet began to vibrate. A low grinding sound came from it. A wisp of smoke rose from the area around the data port. It's overloading, Sue shouted, watching the sensor data. Suddenly, the black visor of the helmet flickered. A dim, shaky image appeared on it for a split second. It was a face, a human face. A woman with short, dark hair and a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She was smiling. Then the image vanished. The Zelen scientists gasped and stepped back. What was that? One of them cried. The helmet let out a loud popping sound. The faint energy signature they had been monitoring suddenly dropped to 0. The helmet was dark. The power was gone. In the silence that followed, Tay stared at the dead artifact in horror. He had done it. He had broken the most important discovery in galactic history. Luna looked at her scanner. The primary power cell is destroyed. The energy surge was too much. It's dead. On the Curiosity, Sue slammed his hand on the console. I told them. They killed it. Jin felt a deep sadness. That helmet was a piece of his people's history, a piece of a person named Lena. And now it was broken. But Captain Hana was looking at the frozen image on their screen. They had recorded the brief moment the visor lit up. Zoom in on that face, she said quietly. Sue worked the controls. The image of the woman's face filled the screen. She looked young. She looked tired, but her smile was warm. She did not look like a destroyer. She looked like a soldier, a human soldier. And then Sue made a small choked sound. He was staring at the woman's eyes. He knew those eyes. He had seen them every day of his life, looking back at him from the mirror. His body went stiff. His face lost all its color. The noise of the ship, the worried voices of Jin and Hana, it all faded into a dull buzz in his ears. The pieces, the size, the name, the face, it all crashed together in his mind into one impossible, undeniable truth. He wasn't on the official command channel. His words weren't meant for the Zelen. They were a raw, unfiltered reaction, a punch of realization that escaped his lips in a stunned whisper, broadcast to everyone on the Curiosity's internal comms and, through the still-open observational link, directly into the silent, horrified Zelen laboratory. Ego, he breathed out, the word heavy with shock. He pinched the bridge of his nose, closing his eyes as if he could block out what he had just seen. Oh, damn, that's not a destroyer's helmet. He opened his eyes and looked at the face on the screen. The face of the woman he knew from 100 old family photos. That's Mom's old helmet. The silence was absolute. On the Axelan ship in the laboratory, every sound had stopped. The scientists were frozen. Luna stood with her hand over her mouth. Tay stared at the comm speaker, his face a mask of complete and utter confusion. The words hung in the air, impossible and strange. Mom's old helmet. On the Curiosity, the silence was just as deep. Jin and Captain Hana turned to look at Sue. He was still pale, still staring at the woman's face on the screen. Sue, Hana said, her voice gentle. What are you saying? Sue blinked slowly. He pointed a shaky finger at the image. That's my mother. Her name is Lena, that's her. He looked at Jin, his eyes wide with disbelief. The name in the helmet, Lena, that's her. She was a colonial marine. A long time ago, before she had me. Before she settled down. Jin felt the world shift under his feet. This was not just a piece of human history. This was Sue's family history. The first destroyer was Sue's mother. Back on the Zelen ship, Tay found his voice. It was cold and sharp. Captain Hana, he said over the comm. Explain this. Explain this. This joke, Hana took a deep breath. This was the moment she had feared. Ambassador, this is not a joke. We believe the artifact is of human origin. A wave of murmurs went through the Zelen scientists. Human origin? How was that possible? Tay's face tightened. Impossible. The timelines do not match. The Great Scouring was over 10,000 years ago. Your species had not even achieved spaceflight then. Your history does not go back that far. Our recorded history does not, Jin cut in, thinking fast. But there are gaps. The silent century. We lost many records from our early expansion. This is an insult. Tay's voice rose, filled with anger now. You see our greatest discovery, a relic of a cosmic terror, and you claim it as your own. You say it belongs to your mother? He said the word mother like it was a dirty thing. Sue finally snapped out of his shock. The anger in Tay's voice woke him up. He felt a sudden hot need to defend the woman on the screen. It's not a claim. It's the truth. That's her. Her name is Lena. She was a sergeant. She liked old music and she hated carrots. She wasn't a destroyer. She was a person. The direct personal outburst shocked the Zelen into silence again. They were used to talking about history and theory. They were not used to someone yelling about his mother's food preferences. Luna stepped forward. She looked from the dead helmet to the image of the woman's face. She saw the determination in the smile, the humanity in the eyes. She saw the resemblance to the angry human engineer on the comm screen. Ambassador, she said quietly, the artifact is non-functional. We have learned all we can from it with our current methods. Perhaps we should hear them out. Tay was furious, but he was also a diplomat. He saw the broken helmet. His attempt had failed. He had nothing to show for it. He needed a new path forward. Very well, he said, his voice tight. You will come to the Emissary of Dawn. You will explain this story. But know this, if this is a trick, the consequences will be severe. A short time later, Jin, Su, and Captain Hana stood in the Zelen laboratory. The helmet sat dark and silent in its containment field. The air was cold. Tay stood before them, his arms crossed. Luna stood at his side, her expression curious and cautious. Speak, Tay said. Jin began. He spoke calmly and clearly. The helmet is a standard-issue Terran Colonial Marines helmet, Mark IV. It is from the late 23rd century. The port on the side is for a Mark VII data and power interface. The alloy is a perfected chromium steel composite, designed for long-term durability in harsh environments. The power source was a long-life radioisotope battery. It was not a weapon. It was a beacon, a locator. Tay listened, his face unreadable. And the energy signature? The one that led us to it. It was the beacon, Su said, his voice steadier now. It was set to a very low power, a sleep mode. It was waiting for a friendly signal to wake it up. For a Marine recovery team that never came. And the woman? Luna asked, looking at Su. Su took a small, deep breath. That is my mother, Lena. She served for 20 years. She was a mechanic and a communications specialist. She was honorably discharged. She is alive. She lives on Jeju Island on Earth. She tends a garden. He looked directly at Tay. She grows flowers. The idea was so simple, so domestic, so completely opposite to the concept of a destroyer, that it seemed to hang in the air. A destroyer of worlds. Who grows flowers? Tay was not convinced. A nice story. But it is just a story. You have no proof. Your mother's face and a name are not proof. This could be a coincidence. The helmet is the proof, Jin said. But you shorted out its main power. However, old Marine gear had a backup, a secondary physical data chip. It's called a dog tag drive. It's designed to survive even if the main system fails. Luna's eyes widened. A secondary storage where? Su pointed to the helmet. There's a small hidden compartment. Near the left ear. You have to press the right sequence on the neck ring to open it. My mom. She showed me once on her old helmet she kept in the attic. Tay looked at Luna. She checked her scanner. There is a microscopic seam in that location. I did not think it was important. Let him try, Captain Hana said. After a long, tense moment, Tay gave a sharp nod. Su stepped up to the containment field. It deactivated with a soft hum. He reached out and touched the cold, dark metal of the helmet. It felt strange to touch something that had belonged to his mother, from so long ago. He found the segments on the neck ring. He pressed them in a specific order, a sequence his mother had taught him when he was a boy, a fun secret about her old gear. There was a quiet click. A small, hidden panel, no bigger than a fingernail, slid open near the helmet's ear. Inside was a tiny crystalline chip. It was dusty but intact, the dog tag, Su said softly. He carefully removed the chip. It holds her service record, her personal logs, everything. The Zelen laboratory was utterly silent. All eyes were fixed on the tiny chip in Su's hand. It was smaller than a pebble, but it held the truth about the helmet, the truth about the first destroyer, the truth about what really happened 10,000 years ago. The tiny data chip felt heavy in Su's hand. It was a simple piece of technology, but it held the answers they all needed. The Zelen scientists brought forward a universal reader, a device that could access almost any form of data storage. Please, Luna said, her voice full of a new respect. Su carefully placed the chip into the reader. A light on the device glowed blue. A holographic screen flickered to life above it. The display was old-fashioned, using simple, blocky letters from an ancient Earth computer language. The first file that opened was a service record. Name, Lee. Lena rank, Sergeant, Technical Specialist ID 774098821 Unit. 3rd Colonial Marines. Dust Devil status. Missing in action, presumed KIA, killed in action. Last known location. Outpost Xylo 7. Su read the words presumed KIA, and his heart ached. He had always known his mother was a veteran, but she never talked about the war. He never knew she was declared missing. He never knew she was here on this dead world. Tay read the record, his face still hard. This proves nothing. It only proves a human was here. It does not explain the legend of the destroyer. Keep reading, Jin said quietly. Luna opened the next file. It was a personal log. The voice that came from the speaker was young, clear, and tired. It was Sue's mother's voice from 10,000 years ago. Log entry, Sergeant Lee, date. Does it even matter anymore? We've lost track. Outpost Xylo 7 is gone. The rest of my squad is gone. The swarm hit us at dawn. They just keep coming. You can't fight them, not really. You can only burn them out. We had to use the planet cracker missiles on our own position. It was the only way to stop the advance. The Zellan scientists listened, confused. The swarm? One of them whispered. Command says this is a war for survival. They're right. The swarm doesn't want to talk. It doesn't want to trade. It just consumes. It takes over living minds, turns them into more of itself. We found what was left of the Zellan civilization on the next planet over. Just empty cities and a few mindless husks wandering around. The swarm had already eaten them. A gasp went through the room. Luna's hand flew to her mouth. Tay's eyes went wide with horror. The Great Scouring was not the work of the humans. Their own people, their ancient civilization had been the first victims. They had been consumed by this swarm. The log continued, the voice growing sadder. We're the reason this whole sector is dead. We had to burn it. We had to burn every world the swarm touched. We had to make a fire break to save the rest of the galaxy, to save Earth. We scoured the stars clean to stop the infection. I guess that makes us the bad guys in someone else's story. The destroyers. But we had no choice. The truth was now clear and terrible. The humans had not been the monsters. They had been the doctors. The galaxy had a cancer, a psionic hive mind called the swarm. The only way to save the patient was to cut out the infected parts. The humans had done the horrible, necessary thing. They had fought a war of annihilation to save all other life. They had taken the blame. They had let themselves be remembered as the first destroyers, so that the species that came after, like the Zellan, would never have to know the true horror of the swarm. The final log entry played. This is my last entry. My suit power is almost gone. I've set my beacon to low power. Maybe one day someone will come. I'm uploading my service record and personal files to the dog tag. I want someone to know I was here. My name is Lena. I had a family on Earth. I miss them. Tell them I'm sorry I didn't make it home. The log ended. The room was completely silent. The anger was gone from Tay's face. It was replaced by a deep, heavy understanding. He looked at the helmet not as a relic of a monster, but as the grave of a soldier who died to save him and his entire species. Luna had tears in her large, dark eyes. They saved us, she whispered. They sacrificed their own history. They let us think they were monsters so we could live in peace. Sue looked at the chip. He finally understood his mother's silence. She had carried this terrible secret her whole life. The memory of a war so awful that the only way to win was to become a destroyer. She had come home, started a family, grown her flowers, and never spoken a word. Tay took a step towards Sue. He bowed his head, a sign of deep respect among the Zellan. Your mother, Tay said, his voice thick with emotion. Your mother was not a destroyer. She was a savior, and we called her a monster for 10,000 years. Sue nodded, his own eyes wet. She was just a soldier. She was just doing her job. Captain Hana spoke, her voice firm but gentle. The war against the swarm nearly broke humanity. The survivors decided to hide the truth. They came home, lowered their profile, and let the galaxy forget. They thought it was better to be seen as a mid-level species than as the ones who had to burn the stars. Tay looked at the helmet. They bore the weight of our fear and our hatred so we could sleep at night. He turned to Hana, Jin, and Sue. The galaxy must know the truth. The story of the first destroyer is a lie. The true story is one of courage and sacrifice. Jin shook his head. Are you sure? The truth is terrible. It might cause panic. The swarm is gone, but the fear of it could be just as bad. The truth is always better than a comfortable lie, Tay said. He had learned his lesson. We will tell the story of Sergeant Lee Lena, not as a destroyer, but as a protector. We will tell the story of the humans who gave up their honor to save us all. They held a small ceremony on the surface of Xylos. They buried the helmet again, this time as a memorial. Luna placed a Zellan crystal of remembrance on the grave. Tay spoke words of thanks and apology to the spirit of the human soldier who had died there. As they prepared to leave, Sue stood by the grave for a final moment. He thought about his mother safe at home in her garden. He thought about the young woman in the logs, scared and alone, making her last stand. He was sad, but he was also proud. He pulled out his personal communicator. He had a message to send. He typed a few simple words to his mother. "Mom, I finally understand. Thank you. I love you." Back on the ships, a new understanding grew between the humans and the Zelen. They were not just allies anymore. They were family, bound by a secret history of sacrifice. The humans were not a mid-tier species. They were the quiet guardians who had once been monsters so that the galaxy could have a future. And Sue's mom wasn't a destroyer. She was a hero who had always hoped someone would find her and tell her family she was thinking of them at the end.